um, autonomous vehicle communication with human users of our roadways. So again, my name is Nick Ferenczak. I am a professor in the Civil Engineering Department at the University of New Mexico, and I can't see the chat box. I have my screen completely up here, so if you have any questions, please just feel free to interrupt me, or Crystal, if I'm running over my time. I'm tracking it here, but feel free to just let me know. Okay, so the idea behind this research is that autonomous vehicles hold a lot of promise to improve our traffic operations, improve traffic safety. Depending on how we roll these things out, they can have great implications for equity. So there's all kinds of benefits that can be had. To realize those benefits is to make sure that there is communication between the autonomous vehicles and the human users of the roadway. So what we're shooting for is the development of a simple, uniform language that human users of the roadway can understand what autonomous vehicles are doing, and that should lead to trust, and that should lead to acceptance. So you can think about maybe brake lights or turn signals, right? Simple, uniform, no matter what language you speak, where you are in the world, everybody knows what those simple lights are trying to communicate. So can we develop some kind of language like that for autonomous vehicles so they can communicate what they're thinking, what they're seeing, and what they're going to do? Okay, so there's kind of two different reasons that we're looking at how to improve communication. That is perceptions and behavior. So for this presentation and our current research, we're specifically focusing on perceptions. We're also collecting data on behavior, but that's not quite there yet. So we're just focusing on perceptions for right now. Perceptions will lead to increased acceptance of these new technologies. There's also big safety implications of how people perceive and understand autonomous vehicles. So if you see an autonomous vehicle and you think, oh, it has seen me, it is stopping, but that's not what it was actually trying to communicate, you step in front of it, right? There's obviously big safety implications of having a good communication system. Future research, we're going to be looking at behavior. So think about stopping sight distance, right? It's a combination of perception reaction and then actually hitting the brakes. So if our perception reactions are going to change drastically with these new technologies, that's going to have a big impact on how our traffic systems operate. Think about all of the modeling that goes into signalization and all of that. Right, that's all built on assumptions of gap acceptance and all of these different factors. If that's going to change with these new technologies on our streets, that's, again, going to have a big impact. So these are the two kind of factors that we're looking at. Specifically in terms of perceptions, we're looking at a few different metrics. So we're looking at, do folks understand what this autonomous vehicle is doing? How quickly do they understand what the autonomous vehicle is doing? That's kind of the base. We need to understand what's actually going on. Then that will lead to comfort and trust in these new technologies. So we measure that as well. And then all of that will hopefully lead to acceptance of these new technologies. So hopefully we can push that 50% acceptance that we have right now up higher if people are comfortable with these new technologies and if they trust them. So these are the different metrics that we are looking at with this research. Right now with this current presentation, the current research that we're doing, we're focusing on the left here on pedestrians. How do pedestrians perceive and understand autonomous vehicles? We're also starting to develop our bicycle and driving simulators. So that's actually going to be a year 4 Tran-SET project, so stay tuned for some more results. But right now with this work, we're just looking at pedestrians. This is where Mohammad Reza's research is fairly applied. They've actually got prototypes out there. This research is, I think, a little bit further back on the technology readiness scale. So there's probably 4 or 5 pieces of research out right now regarding pedestrians. 2 or 3 of those are from Europe, so there's not a lot of research going on right now. And in terms of drivers and bicyclists, there's no research out there right now. So this is very much a nascent research area. So our methodology, we modeled this in virtual reality. We didn't want to go and buy an expensive autonomous vehicle and then actually run it on the streets and put people at risk. So we just modeled this up in VR. We had 47 participants run through our scenarios. We had a within subject experiment design. So that means each subject went through each different scenario, and we'll talk about those scenarios in a minute. We had a 15 by 8 foot VR area with a wireless headset. So you can see it here. We set up in the Student Union building a few times. So participants actually had room to walk around, really immerse themselves in this VR environment. This is what our VR environment looked like. So once you put that headset on, this is what you are seeing. So we gave each participant So we gave each participant a minute to kind of acclimate and walk around a little bit. And then this was a task-based VR scenario. So they were tasked with hitting this first button. And then once they hit that button, another button springs up in the middle of the roadway. And they were told they need to hit that button, but this also activates an autonomous vehicle. They're not sure if this AV is going to stop for them or if it's going to continue. So it's mid-block, it's not really clear, will this stop, will this not? So they need to look at the autonomous vehicle, figure out what is this doing, and then go and hit the button. And we have on display here all 4 of our interfaces, but for the actual scenarios that participants were running through, there was only one interface at a time. So we modeled our interfaces on different interfaces that AV developers are actually proposing. So here on the top left, we have what we called a text grill. So Smart, and this is, I think, Google Waymo. They were both proposing having some kind of text display on the grill of the vehicle. And then also Uber down here in the bottom left, they also had a text display in their patent design. On the top right, we have a text display that's on the roof or on the windshield. So this was Nissan and Drive AI that were proposing these. And then on the bottom right, so those were textual displays. The bottom right, this is just an LED strip that is being proposed by Ford and by Volvo. So the LEDs just move in and out based on what the vehicle is going to be doing. And then also bottom left, again with Uber, we tested these arrows on the side mirrors. So we had 4 different interfaces that we tested out. I also like showing this one. So just showing all of the crazy ideas that people are throwing out. This is actually Jaguar Land Rover's idea. So their vehicles are gonna have googly eyes that will look at you when it recognizes you as a pedestrian. We did not test that one, but some crazy ideas going on out there. So this is what our text grill display looked like. It was blank until the vehicle detected the pedestrian, then please proceed to cross lit up, and the arrows blink. The text display on the roof, it just says proceed to cross. It's blank until the AV detects the pedestrian, and then the text blinks. The LED windshield, again, the LED strip is blank. Once the pedestrian is detected, LEDs go from inside to outside and back. And the arrows, once the pedestrian is detected, the arrows will blink. So those are the 4 interfaces that we tested with our VR environment. After each scenario, we asked the participants to answer this survey. It was a Likert score. Did you understand the AV's intentions? How quickly did you understand the intentions? Did you base your decision to cross on the AV's speed or on the interface itself? Did you feel that you had the right of way in the interaction? Were you comfortable with this autonomous vehicle? Did you trust the autonomous vehicle? And then how excited would you be to have this autonomous vehicle on your streets? And all of the answers, the higher scores were more positive. Okay, so on to some results. So first, we looked at whether there is an interface present versus if there's not an interface present. And we found that responses were higher when there was an interface present. So perceptions are better when you have some kind of interface there. You can see that here. So with an interface is over here, these scores are almost always higher than when there's not an interface. The largest difference, so the difference between those scores was 1.3, and that was, did you base your decision on the interface or versus the speed of the autonomous vehicle? So of course we would expect interface versus no interface, there would be a big difference in that response. The lowest change was for acceptance. So there's barely any change for the acceptance of the autonomous vehicles. And that's going to be kind of a theme here. Acceptance is a little bit different from all of the other metrics that we're looking at. Interestingly, females scored higher than males. So female scores were almost always significantly higher than male scores. They had better perceptions. But when you factored in the presence of the interface, their scores changed very little. So you can see these differences here for females, no change, hardly any change, versus males, when there was an interface present, they had much higher perceptions than when there was no interface present. So that was an interesting difference that we picked up. Looking at the actual interfaces, we found that text on the grill was significantly better than any of the other options. The text on the roof was second place, side mirror arrows were third place, and then LED windshield was last. So you'll notice that text are the first two here. People really preferred to have some kind of text display. Interestingly, the LED windshield had the highest scores for acceptance for both genders, although LED was lowest for all the other metrics. So you can see here, 3.76, that was the highest score for acceptance, although the LED scored lowest for every single other question. So again, this acceptance metric is a little bit different from all of the other metrics that we're looking at. We tested statistical significance of all this. The text grill had better outcomes than both non-textual displays for understanding, speed of understanding, feeling that you had the right of way, and comfort. The text roof had better scores than the LED for using the interface and right of way. Side mirror arrows only had a better relationship than the LED windshield for one metric. And then interestingly, the LED windshield had a higher outcome for acceptance, like we just talked about. So conclusions, we can definitively say that having some kind of interface improves people's perceptions of autonomous vehicles. Although females generally reported higher scores, males had a larger response to the presence of the interface. And I should have defined EHMI, external human machine interface. Both genders agree that the textual displays are better than the non-textual displays, and understanding, comfort, and trust both followed the same pattern, but acceptance was a little bit different, and we're going to have to look a little bit deeper to understand how do we improve acceptance. So just some final thoughts for some future research. How do we overcome these issues inherent with text displays? So folks like the text displays, they can understand what's going on, but what if you don't speak or read English, or, right, well, there's going to be legibility if it's foggy out or it's raining. So there's all kinds of different issues with text, even though initially people seem to prefer that. What role does the size of the interface play? So the interface that scored the best was also the largest. So we need to understand what impact that size had on these perceptions. What kind of learning curve is present? Maybe for the first few years that AVs are on our streets, folks want a text display, but then once they get used to it, maybe some kind of LED or blinking light would suffice once they start to understand how these vehicles work. What role might color, sequence, time of day, weather conditions play? We did a nice sunny day, didn't fool around with different colors or anything like that. So that's future research that we can look into a bit more. Are text displays preferred when there's multiple AVs? So we looked at one autonomous vehicle. What if there's 10 autonomous vehicles at the same intersection? Now you have to read 10 different displays to figure out what's going on. Probably not going to be a feasible solution. And then finally, people reported feeling this way. These are their perceptions, but how would they actually behave in the real world? So all of this is future research that we want to continue to look at. So thank you very much for your attention, and I'll take any questions.
I was wondering if you could give me a little bit of information about what kind of statistical analysis you did. Obviously, you don't have time to go into the details, but.
Yes. So type of logistical regression. I can't remember the name off the top of my head. It's used for Likert scales where your output is 1 to 5 on an ordinal, I think ordinal logistic regression. But it's one that's typically used for Likert scale outcomes.
Okay, thanks.
Yep, I can pull that up here as well as we're going through other questions.
Hey, Nick, this is Charles Remke. Just wanted to give you a heads up. I think the chat is disabled. At least it is on my interface.
Oh, chat is disabled. Okay, thank you for letting me know. Crystal, do you know how to?
No, but I can see if we can fix that for future sessions.
Oh, okay, we just got a test and I can see that from Samer.
This is Samer. I just sent one now and it seems it's going through, if you've seen it.
Yes, yeah, I can see that. Crystal, I just looked up, sorry, just one of the benefits of being remote here, I just opened up the paper. It was an ordinal logistic regression. Those are good for Likert scale outputs.
Thank you.
Yep. Any other questions? All right, if there's no other questions, then I guess we